All right, let's kick off episode 62 of the podcast devoted to the classic and sometimes not so classic genre cinema of yesteryear with the song Transylvania Dreamin'. It's from the band J Poison and the Bat People. It's from their album Transylvania Dreamin', and you can find out more about them over at jpoisonandthebatpeople.bandcamp.com, or on their Instagram, or on their Facebook, or on their TikTok, or on their YouTube page. However you do it, let them know you heard about them here on Bride of Monster Kid Radio. My name is Derek M. Cook. Welcome to the show. I'm the writer, host, and producer of what we do here, and I'm excited because we are finally doing a Stephen King movie here on the show. I know, it's a little outside the wheelhouse. However, it's got vampires, it's got a monster kid, and it's got a very, very excited Ricardo Delgado joining me to talk about it here on this week's episode, and I'm stoked. This is going to be a good time. Ricardo is somebody that I don't get on the show often enough, but the dude has got cred. He's been working in the industry for years. He worked on Star Trek, for crying out loud. He worked with James Cameron. He's now a member of the Motion Picture Academy. He's instructing the next generation of visual effects artists and just motion picture folks, and just, he's the man. And he took some time to chat with us here on Bride of Monster Kid Radio, and it's going to be a good time. However, before we get to that, we do have Kenny's look at Famous Monsters of Filmland. Yes, they even covered Salem slot at one point, so we're going to get that. And we've got Mark Matzke's Beta Capsule review, still working on Ultraman Taro. Before we get to that, though, we had an email come in from Monster Kid Radio irregular Brian Clark. Here's what he had to say. Greetings, Derek and Beth. On the latest episode, you pondered how many times one gets to see a werejackal in a movie. This is in reference to last week's episode, The Mummy and the Curse of the Jackals. That movie. It's a movie, and it was so much fun. Robert Kelly and I had a blast talking about it. If you haven't listened to that episode, go back and check it out. Anyway, Brian continues. How many times does one get to see a werejackal in a movie? At least 2 for sure. The same goofy werejackal suit makes an appearance in one of my favorite pieces of 1960s psychotronic sleaze, Dracula the Dirty Old Man. Now, this movie, which makes Mummy and the Curse of the Jackals look like a lavish production, sees the Count create a henchman that he dubs Irving Jackalman to fetch him women to feed on. The dialogue is all overdubbed Kung Pao Enter the Fist style by a couple of guys doing ridiculous Borscht Belt accents. It's a bit too naughty to be BMKR material, but worth seeking out for those with a taste for such things. Cheers, Brian. So, this actually did come up with Robert and I, but because it's not exactly material that we would normally cover here on the show, I ended up cutting that portion of the conversation. We didn't get too deep into it other than just mentioning that it was shot shortly around the same time using some of the same locations. I didn't realize they used the same monster suit, but that kind of tracks given what we learned about the production companies involved and that sort of thing. So yeah, Dracula the Dirty Old Man, probably not something we're ever going to talk about again here on the show, but we are going to talk to Brian again in the future. I'd love to get him back on, find something to talk about. I know he's been busy working on a number of different projects, which, I'll let him talk about the next time I have him on the show. We had another email come in from Angela S. Angela writes, Dear Derek, it was a real treat to hear you and Robert Kelly dig into The Mummy and the Curse of the Jackals on your latest episode. Your appreciation for those wonderfully wacky entries in the genre, right down to John Carradine's always memorable presence, is exactly what makes Bride of Monster Kid Radio such a joyful listen. The touches like Mark Matzke's Beta Capsule review and the coverage of Famous Monsters of Filmland add even more to the Monster Kid atmosphere. Now, Angela continues by recommending I reach out to somebody to have him on the show, and I am going to reach out to that person. So I appreciate that, Angela. Thank you for the recommendation, and thanks for writing in. I love hearing from people here on the show and reading y'all's voicemails at the top of every episode. If you want to contribute to this part of the show and extending the music a little bit from the opening and closing band, please email me at monsterkidradio@gmail.com, and I'll include your email in a future episode. I do share these emails with Beth as well, so if you have anything to say to her, well, I'll make sure she gets the message. We would love to hear from you by voice as well, so if you want to call and leave us a voicemail, you can do that by calling 360-524-2484. So we've had Jay Poison and the Bad People playing for a little while. We're going to give them a little bit of a rest and get into the rest of the episode with Mark and Kenny and Ricardo right after this.
Dracula, the most terrifying lover the world has ever known.
Who will be his bride tonight?
Horror of Dracula.
Dracula, dead and yet alive for 600 years.
Dracula, the human vampire who lusts for human blood.
See Horror of Dracula.
The greatest shock story of them all now achieves new heights of motion picture suspense.
See Horror of Dracula and watch the fiend who rises each night from his coffin bed to seek the rendezvous that alone can keep him alive.
See Horror of Dracula and watch those who came to destroy a monster stay to become his victim.
See Horror of Dracula.
But don't dare see it alone.
The chill of the tomb won't leave your blood for hours.
Horror of Dracula.
All new and in flaming Technicolor.
The Brides of Dracula.
Never before has a motion picture revealed so much of the mystical, the unnatural.
The Brides of Dracula.
Out of the unknown darkness he comes, the handsomest, the most evil Dracula of them all, bringing horror beyond human endurance to a fashionable girls' school. Who can resist him as one by one he seeks out his fresh, innocent victims? Who will be next to know his kiss of death as one by one he lures young beauties into the timeless, bloodless realm of the undead? Beware of pity, for he feels none. Beware of love, for none can refuse him. Never has the struggle between good and evil been so shocking and the outcome so uncertain. Terror beyond telling in color.
The Brides of Dracula.
Live from the Land of Light in Nebula M78, home of the mighty Ultra Heroes, it's Monster Kid Radio's Beta Capsule Review. Ultraman Taro, Episode 21, The Sinking of Tokyo Newtown, original air date, August 24th, 1973. Kenichi and Kotaro have a difficult time finding cicadas due to suburban sprawl and construction, but their search leads them to Soichi, a former classmate of Kenichi who is somewhat of an insect expert. His cicadas came from the supermarket, but at home, their buzzing drives his mother to distraction. With little warning, Tokyo Newtown, where Soichi and family lives, begins to sink into the ground, with entire apartment complexes swallowed whole. Kotaro arrives just in time to rescue the boy from the grip of a giant cicada larva, leading Soichi to the hypothesis that it was trapped when the buildings were built above it. ZAT works to unearth the giant bug, and it promptly begins to demolish the remaining apartments. Soichi argues with ZAT, pleading to let the creature live, since it'll only exist for a week. ZAT agrees to trap the giant cicada in a net, but its relentless buzzing pushes local residents to their breaking point, and a mob tries to kill the insect. Their actions only free the beast, which takes wing, finally landing on Tokyo Tower. Provoked yet again by humans, the monster manifests the ability to breathe fire, forcing ZAT to attack in self-defense. The Sinking of Tokyo Newtown is an engaging entry in Ultraman Taro, which takes some stylistic cues from earlier series. Avant-garde camera angles, quick cuts, and dolly shots abound, conjuring memories of the original Ultraman and Ultra 7, especially the episodes directed by Akio Jisagi. This episode, based on a story by Kamen Rider screenplay scribe Shozo Murayama, has a lot to say about how crowds of annoyed people can make poor decisions, and contains a straightforward environmental message as well. Another strength is the appearance of the giant cicada named King Zemura, a truly great and detailed suit complemented by miniature sets of both Newtown and Tokyo proper that are rendered with meticulous care. Perhaps best of all, kids are running the show, influencing ZAT's decisions and communicating directly with Ultraman Taro, which results in a merciful outcome for King Zemura. For Bride of Monster Kid Radio's Beta Capsule Review, this is Mark Matzke reporting.
The Mysterian! The Mysterian! The Mysterian! You are now inside a flying saucer. Our destination, the planet Earth. We are the Mysterian. Our race is old, dying, our planet dead. Only you of Earth, you and your women, can give us life. And what we want, we take. Swooping down from outer space, flowing up from the lower depths, the Mysterians. Creatures who knew the uttermost secrets of the atom before our planet was born. Love-hungry spacemen come to seize our women that their dying race may live. It started in the east. Soon it swept the west. The all-out horror of interplanetary war. See giant robots no earthly weapon can destroy rip a path of destruction across the land. See the forces of nature harnessed to the invader's will wipe entire cities from the face of the world. See the earth itself crumble beneath your feet. The Mysterians, threatening our civilization with weapons beyond the belief of modern science. Flying ray guns that blast everything before them. An impregnable fortress that hides in the earth. Gamma rays that melt the heaviest armament. As men and machines disintegrate before your eyes. The Mysterians. What power can stop their ruthless advance? See the blazing holocaust of an earth gone mad. See on the giant screen in flaming color. The Mysterians.
Tonight's film deals with the supernatural as a possessed man attempts to destroy his family. Although edited for television, it may not be suitable for young viewers. Parental discretion is advised. Tonight, an ABC premiere presentation. Jack Nicholson. Shelley Duvall. The ultimate exercise in terror.
Anybody here?
A masterpiece of modern horror. The Shining.
Here's Johnny.
Hello there, Bride of Monster Kid Radio heads. This is Kenny with a look at Famous Monsters of Filmland. Today we are looking at the 1979 TV miniseries Salem's Lot. In FM 162 from April of 1980, I found an interview with up-and-coming author of Salem's Lot, Stephen King. It covered the film version of his first novel, Carrie, and looked ahead to the soon-to-be-released The Shining. There was also this portion about today's film. What inspired your second novel, Salem's Lot? Stephen King. I was teaching Dracula at that time. I was teaching school, and there was a course called Fantasy and Science Fiction, and Dracula was one of the books. We got sitting around and rapping at the dinner table about what would have happened if Dracula came back today in modern dress. And my first reaction was that he'd go to New York and get run over by a taxi cab. But it wouldn't go away. And when I was bored or just sitting around, I kept coming back to that question. What would happen if Dracula came back today? And I put him in different settings. I put him in the West. I put him in the city. and I finally put him in my own native New England. It was kind of like, the 3 lights, the 3 bars, jackpot. It wouldn't go away, and the more I thought about it, the better it began to seem to me. And finally, I had to sit down and write it. A lot of things came into play. The Dracula thing was the basis, but I started thinking about the old EC comics, the vampire stories, and I thought maybe I'd work this in. And I started to think about Thornton Wilder's play, Our Town, and Peyton Place too, both of which tried to get below the surface of the sort of everything's all right, the makeup to what's real. It was very exciting to write that book and to try to balance those 3 things off. And I think they work in the book to varying degrees. It was fun to write. What was your feeling about the television movie based on Salem's Lot? Well, David Soul, who plays Ben Mears, looks just right. You couldn't improve on that. I'm a little bit disappointed in the vampire, Barlow. They turned him into Nosferatu. If you've ever seen the Max Schreck Nosferatu, then you've seen Barlow, as he is presented in this miniseries on CBS. He looks properly repulsive and properly horrible, and I'm sure he'll scare people. I think that what really bothers me about it is that it also demonstrates a certain bankruptcy of originality. But they were very dogmatic on the idea that in order to be horrible, the vampire can't be presented in a Frank Langella way. It can't be presented like Louis Jourdan in the Dracula that was on PBS. He had to be repulsive. A traditional, very stylized characterization? Yeah, it was okay for me if they wanted to make him repulsive. What I didn't like about it was that they felt they had to make him into something that had already been done before. That's not the only way to judge, and it may be just a straw in the window. Who was cast as Barlow? He's a character actor. He didn't have much to say in the teleplay. His name is Reggie somebody, and I understand that he is naturally quite ugly. With makeup and everything, he's just horrendous. It's horrible. But James Mason plays Straker, the vampire's familiar. David Soul plays Ben Mears. Bonnie Bedelia is Susan Norton. There's a host of other Hollywood character actors in the thing who somehow seem right. I think the acting is good. There's a lot of very visual gore and violence in the book, and that usually meets with a lot of friction getting onto TV. Were a lot of changes made in that respect? Palma Nash was very careful to substitute a lot of this bitchy charm for a lot of the real outright gore and violence. There is a lot of gore and violence in the movie. The staking of the vampire overrunning the town, but CBS did not allow it on the air. 4 issues later, from August of 1980, I found this article on a future project, which alas never came about, as far as I can tell. Here is The Son of Salem's Lot. The original TV thriller, Salem's Lot, was so hot, in fact, not only the haunted house, but the whole town burned down, that it's going Phoenix-like to rise from the ashes to come back, like The Night Stalker, as a series. And what a challenge that presents, for as you'll remember, at the conclusion of the Stephen King telefilm, the menace had been staked. James Mason was dead, the hero had fled to somewhere in Guatemala, and the hero's girlfriend, who had been bitten and herself became a vampire, somehow got a passport photo and traveled all the way to Central America by night to put the bite on her boyfriend. Another fine mess. Guess who's been called to the rescue? Old Doc Block, Rabbit Robert himself, star of Stooge, Scream, and Motor Psycho. Seriously, fellow Fiend film fan, could you think of a better man for the job? Bob has written the first episode and will be involved with the storylines throughout the series. And the good news you've been waiting for, with bated breath, or in Bates' breath that is, Robert Block is currently engaged, here's electrifying news, in writing Psycho 2. Last good news of all. Like Bela Lugosi in The Black Sleep, Reggie Nalder is scheduled to be seen but not heard in the Salem sequels. Block reveals as the Nosferatic vampire Barton. Nalder will be bobbing in and out of episodes, noshing at ye old Salem smorgasbord. In one episode, FM has learned he may even be seen wolfing down his dinner, because there's a distinct possibility a werewolf will be involved. So, you got a series ahead about future supernatural adventures among the undead. A series to ice your spine and freeze your marrow. A lot. That is all for this week's look at Famous Monsters of Filmland. We will have more next time. For BMKR, this is Kenny saying adios.
This is Count Vlad, but you may recognize me by my more familiar name, Count Dracula, and I'm here to offer you a friendly warning. Derek and his guests often get excited, and occasionally this results in revealing key plot points of the movies they're discussing. In your parlance, you might call these revelations spoilers. You know how the children of the night, monster kids, can get sometimes. So consider yourself warned, and don't come begging to me to kill them for their transgressions afterward. I have more pressing issues to take care of, like that pesky Van Helsing.
Bride of Monster Kid Radio listeners, I've been wanting to do this for a while. I've never talked about Stephen King proper here on the show. He's kind of sort of outside of the wheelhouse in terms of the so-called time frames that I use here on the show. It's a vampire story, and it's my show. I make the rules, right? And I didn't want to talk about Stephen King by myself. And when Ricardo Delgado told me how much he loves Salem's Lot, I was like, I got to get him on the show. We got to talk about it. We got him here. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well, man. Thank you. Excited to be here and talk to you, but more excited about discussing this epic that doesn't seem like an epic, but it is truly, truly one of the bigger stories in King's universe. It's an amazing story.
The connections that it has throughout all of his stuff. And I don't know, I don't think he planned it all to be connected when he was writing all this stuff to begin with, but all of his works have kind of come together in this huge Dark Tower kind of umbrella. And there are a lot of things in here that kind of reverberate throughout all of Stephen King's work. It's crazy to me because it's so early in his career.
Right.
And yet it's just, you said it's an epic without feeling like an epic. It's huge.
It's huge. I mean, I'm looking at the IMDb page and it's just a colossal cast. I'm speaking specifically of the seminal 1979 miniseries that scared the bejesus out of me as a little kid. Well, not a little kid. I was like 13, 14. I was a little younger back then. It deeply, deeply impressed me.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Is that kind of where your love for vampire fiction, because you clearly have a love for vampire fiction, was kind of seated?
Actually, it was seeded earlier on in the movies. When I was much younger, of course, I was just obsessed with the Universal monster stuff. Like other kids were talking about ordinary kid stuff, and I was like, so how about that son of Dracula when he turns into mist? That effect was ahead of its time. That stuff just really impressed itself upon me. I do remember being in Costa Rica with my family in 1972. My uncle took me to see Horror of Dracula, Brides of Dracula, and El Santo contra las Mujeres Vampiro. But Horror of Dracula and Brides of Dracula was dubbed in Spanish. Okay. Yeah, I do remember watching Dark Shadows in Spanish as well in Costa Rica. But it was, again, dubbed in Spanish, and it was called Sombras Tenebrosas. And so you might say that Costa Rica was kind of where it all started, and it was at the same time that I was discovering all of the Universal monster films and all their greatness, and I was just agog. And then kind of along with that, Scholastic books, there used to be this flyer that used to come to the class in elementary school during my elementary school years called the Weekly Reader. You can order books from them, and every 2 or 3 weekly readers, you'd see a Monsters of the Movie book, movie monsters book, and I had to have all of those things. And so I was pretty obsessed, but I did not know about Salem's Lot until I saw the miniseries. That I have to say, I read the book after I saw the miniseries, and we can get into that as we go.
I think that's how a lot of people kind of came to it, because this was only the second Stephen King adaptation,
right?
In his long, I'm going to call it his filmography, even though he's primarily the novelist. Carrie was first, and then this being a TV miniseries, and then, I mean, so many other things since then.
Right. And then the thing that makes this an epic in my mind is that, or it fools you into thinking that it's not an epic, is that it's a very intimate story. It starts off very slowly, kind of completely contrasting with today's sort of methodology of storytelling. And you get to know the town of Jerusalem's Lot through the eyes of Ben Mears, in the miniseries played by David Soul, who I was used to seeing in Starsky and Hutch. But the way you get to know all the storylines, all the players in the story before anything even supernatural starts to happen. Although I have to take that back and say something supernatural happens in the first scene right away. There's this really cool light that happens in the holy water that kind of gets you going in terms of like, okay, there's something interesting happening here in terms of monster stuff. When you're a little kid, you're like, look, just get me to the monster scenes. I just get me there as quickly as possible. And so you see that, but then the story slows down, and then you start getting to know all these interesting people, all these interesting characters, all these interesting dynamics. And then boom, this kid gets kidnapped. And slowly everything starts, and King is so great at sort of twisting the story knife, if you will. And the supernatural sort of enters the room quietly, but everyone sees that it's done so, and it begins to permeate all of the story. And it's really cool. It was only later that I kind of discovered Texas Chainsaw Massacre through Salem's Lot, if you will.
Oh, wow.
Right? So it was kind of bass backwards for me in that sense. And then you get a terrific sense of Tobe Hooper's storytelling through Salem's Lot. And it's just it's very linear. It's very straightforward. As a matter of fact, but he just sets the table so well using King's material. And yet there is sort of this mystery that starts to kind of wedge itself into the story. The retrieval of the big cold box by the two guys.
Yeah.
Right? It's so cool, and the way it's kind of inching closer in the truck toward the front of the truck, as if it's like really starving, and it needs to feed right away. It's terrific. And then there's stuff that I really appreciate that remains kind of hidden. So the two guys bring the box with Mr. Barlow inside of it, and then they kind of walk away into the next room to do something else. And in the next scene, it's ripped open, right? Like incredibly violently. And you don't see the violence, but you see the power and the sort of the naked result of that strength. And you're impressed. And the story just continues to move forward that way. It's really, really terrific.
And all that stuff happens long into the start or long into the production. You have, like you said, all this buildup, all this learning about the city through the eyes of Ben or Stephen King. I'm not going to call him a self-insert, but I think we all know Stephen King likes to write about writers.
I mean, there it is. I mean, it's kind of obvious. I mean, I think the one exception is that in The Mist, where he's Bernie Wrightson, right?
True. Or write what you know.
Yeah, you're right. What you know and who you are, and I get all that, and it is kind of an interesting way to sort of self-explain yourself as a protagonist in the story. But again, when you're 12, 13 years old, I gotta say at this point that Salem's Lot came out, the miniseries, in 1979, 2 years after the technical wonder that was Star Wars, right? And so 2 years before that, I was completely all about Star Wars, and it's a deep impression upon me. And yet this thing just really, I sat down based on the idea that, hey, maybe this is like Kolchak, the Night Stalker. I kind of sat down like that, right? You see something on the TV guide and you go, okay, this might be cool. And then the first inkling you get of that is the kidnapping of one of the Glick boys. And then in the miniseries, you then see Mr. Straker, who's played by James Mason. I mean,
oh, he's great.
The sublime, the amazing James Mason, so well. He kind of unwraps this gift, if you will, this dark gift. But in the book, there is sort of a consecration. There is a dark ceremony that happens, but because King's such a terrific writer, you don't know who's doing that. So the boy is sacrificed as well in a very formal way that it opens the door for the vampire to come into the town, which is really, really, really wonderful stuff.
I've read the book, but it has been years, so I'm going to have to rely on you for any talk about the book, just because it's been so long.
That's
but
cool.
yeah, I focus mainly to prepare for this on the miniseries, and you mentioned James Mason. He's just phenomenal.
He's phenomenal. The scene where he's like, "You must face the master. You must put the cross down and face the master." He just does it with such sort of sinister aplomb that it really makes it very easy for you to see why he's the planner. He's the one that kind of comes to the town, and he's the one that sort of starts setting up the antique shop. One of the things I will say about the book is if you read very carefully, and King is such a terrific storyteller, the whole Marston house, the whole Hubie Marston backstory that happens, there is a reason that the vampire does come and to Jerusalem's lot specifically, and it's done through the connectivity of Hubie Marston. But King does it he sprinkles that out throughout the narrative. So you have to tie all that together and read very, very carefully what has happened so that this villainous gangster ends up summoning this incredible darkness to New England, essentially. But it's done so well. And in the film, I just remember being a kid and that little boy turns around and this big shadow just comes up over the screen. And you're just like, holy smokes.
Yeah.
At least I was, man. That really just got me. So
something about Stephen King's writing with almost everything of his that I've read, everything feels very well lived in. We're being dropped into the middle of something that's already living and alive and has history, and that seems to be translated really well with this too. When Ben Mears comes into town, we're not just, hey, we're following Ben Mears. Ben Mears is intruding upon this town almost, I mean, though he's from here, intruding into this town, and we're getting to learn more about what's going on through the town. Through him, we're introduced to other characters and such that have their own relationships and their own things going. And just the characterizations in this and the way they're presented just makes the whole thing feel even that more terrifying to me, because these are real people that are about to be dealt a very terrible hand.
right. And so there's all these really intricate storylines, some of which are in the miniseries, many of which are not. And they all work like clockwork. And you have everybody from the kids that's baling hay to the fellow that works out in the garbage dump, and the postman, the cop. That cop is actually in the story, and the deputy. But all that stuff just works so well, and the ease in which that King tells this very complex story about all these people and keeps track of all of them, tells you about the history of Salem's Lot, named after a pig, if I'm remembering the story correctly. There's like a way that he introduces Americana. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Like it's like baseball, fireworks at the 4th of July, and horror like that. Those ingredients, he works them so well. I think that's kind of the difference between, if we could take a step back into the bigger picture here, traditional horror at that point, or before that, at least what I'm familiar with, is Poe and A Dreary Castle and a cloudy day, and maybe there's rain, maybe there's lightning. And King didn't do that. King put horror in your post office. He put it in your drugstore. There's a scene where Straker in the book where Straker comes to a local grocery store, and there's like 5 older guys sitting there playing checkers and eating pickles, if you will, right? Just like you would see in any small town. And he comes and he pays for some basic groceries, but he pays with like a bill that's 40 years old. Okay. And so then he gets in his car, and his car is like 50 years old. And so then the 5 guys that are sitting there playing checkers and eating pickles, they start talking about, is it a 38 Plymouth or a 39 Plymouth? Well, the 38 Plymouth had the rail boards. Well, I think you're mistaken. And yet he's setting up spectacularly how Straker is even more of an alien that way. Like he's saying he pays with bills that aren't from this part of the century. His car is from another time. He himself is buying very simple groceries. And he's not buying rice-a-roni or beef-a-roni, right? He didn't buy Pepsi. He didn't buy Coke. He buys, I think it's like liver and, eggs and very like, what is that? Why are you buying liver, sir? That kind of thing. And so there's that constant weaving of horror and Americana that works so well. I I told you this before we started, but there's a paragraph that I really liked from a novel that I want to read here, and it's about the Marston House. And it goes something like this: the wind makes you ache in some place that is deeper than your bones. It may be that it touches something old in the human soul, a chord of race memory that says migrate or die. Migrate or die. Even in your house, behind square walls, the wind beats against the wood and the glass and sends its lifeless pucker against the caves. And sooner or later, you'll have to put down what you're doing and go out and see. And you can stand out in your stoop or in your dooryard at mid-afternoon and watch the shadows rush across Griffin's pasture and up Schoolyard Hill, light and dark, like the shutters of the gods being opened and closed. You can see the goldenrod, that most tenacious and pernicious and beauteous of all New England flora, bowing away from the wind like a great and silent congregation. And if there are no cars and planes, and if no one's Uncle John is out in the lot west of town banging away at a quail or a pheasant, if the only sound is the slow beat of your own heart, you can hear another sound, and that is the sound of life winding down to its cyclical close, waiting for the first winter snow to perform last rites. Right? And I read that, I'm like, gosh, I wish I could write like that, man. That's so cool. But like, okay, so he uses the phrase pernicious. Pernicious anemia is part of the diagnosis, right, for one of the Glick boys. And there he goes again, interweaving horror and Americana again, doing it so well. And he finishes with the phrase performing last rites. Like that's just King magic, man. And he lays it down, and then that's why his stuff affected me so much. The guy knew what he was doing.
It's really, really good. And even if it wasn't a vampire story, I mean, there's still enough dread kind of just hovering over everything that feels, I mean, just off-putting. And then the vampire stuff happens, and you're like, okay, now here we go. It's perfect.
Listen, when those kids start floating up to the window,
oh man,
you're just like, what the heck is going on here, man? I had never seen anything before. And look, like I know enough now, when I've done enough in my career where you could just say, okay, like they filmed that backwards, they put them on some kind of boom, but it's still just creepy as all get out. And you're just really taken into the realm that is sort of crossing the veil into the world of the supernatural at that point in the story. And it's really terrifying. And again, it's the invasion of the holiness of America, if you will. You can't get safer than a kid's bedroom somewhere in America, right? And here it's invading that sort of sacred place with an evil presence that's actually the brother. It's really cool.
It's really good. I know that you've been in the industry long enough to know how they do these things, and you know all the tricks. And as somebody who studied it, I know all the tricks. But the fact that it's still as effective today to somebody who knows all the tricks, I mean, I think speaks to the craftsmanship on display here. We know how they did it, but boy, we still love it, and we still get chilled by it.
You still get chilled by it, and it still matters to the story.
Yeah.
And when that corpse sits up in the coroner's table, you're like, well, you know what? It's time for me to go. It's really, really late. It's past my bedtime. I got my jammies on. I think I should just turn this off and run under my covers. And it's spectacular. It's spectacular. And then again, sort of David Soul takes these two, tongue depressors, right? He tapes them together, but that's not enough. That's not enough for King. The cross, the makeshift crucifix has to be consecrated, right? It's the direct reverse of what happened, in the scene that I told you that is in the book, but not the movie, right? There has to be a consecration, and so you have to believe that this thing is going to work. And the vampires all have this like purpley thing going on too, that's really makes them look quite like a corpse more than anything I had seen before as well. And they kind of stretch the makeup over the skin of the actress playing the Glick boy's mom. But boy, she was super scary.
So that sequence there, I wanted to talk about specifically because I've seen a lot of corpses rising scenes. When I did my zombie podcast years ago, I saw it every other week. And even in the movies that I watch today, you still see it. I see it all the time. I mean, you even go back to like Frankenstein with the hand coming up over the sheet or whatever. I've seen it so many times. This scene is so effective and scary and chilling. Yes, it's creepy to see a body move under a sheet, but the reason I was so invested this time around in this particular type of scene was David Soul's performance.
Right.
For a grown man to have this play across his face as if something that he's known his entire life has just been undone.
Absolutely.
He has this break, and he only overcomes it enough to do the tongue depressor and everything else. But that look on his face, it is just so good, and a scene that I can't get out of my head.
You can't get out of your head for a couple of reasons. Like he's using calling for the doctor as urgency, right, to sort of raise the stakes as you go. But as someone who, as you said, has seen this, we've both seen this stuff more than a couple times. There's a really cool shot in there that I think raises the believability and the stakes as we go. And there's the doctor runs in, Ed Flanders, I believe, and he grabs a scalpel and he cuts her arm, and the skin is purple, but the innards are like this yellow gooey stuff if you look carefully. And I just went like that right there. That's vampire stuff right there. That made little kid me go, yep, no, that's the real deal there. And it was really, really effective. I will say that in the novel, that happens right at sunset.
Oh no, even worse.
Yeah, and in the miniseries, it happens about, if you watch the clock in that scene, it happens a little after 10.
Yeah.
At night. So there's kind of a difference there. It'd be too bad Mr. Hooper's not around anymore to ask him why the difference there. As I bring that up, I will say that if you have the DVD or actually the Blu-ray, there's a really nice Tobe Hooper commentary on
is there? Okay.
Yes, I highly recommend it. He breaks it down completely. Absolutely. So that was a magnificent scene. And again, it just kind of raised the stakes. And in the novel, the doctor gets bitten, okay? And he uses scientific means and supernatural means to heal himself. He takes a rabies injection in the neck, if I remember correctly. Yeah, and then they put the cross over his neck as well, just to I double dare you, just kind of raise the stakes. And that is not in the miniseries. It is in the 2024 version that we might just kind of glance over a little bit later on, in terms of like other versions of it. But yeah, that's a really impressive scene. I liked it a lot. That's where you kind of the vampire wheels start kind of rolling, and the miniseries is divided into 2 hour-and-a-half segments, and it ends. The last shot is David Soul looking out a window, and then it starts with James Mason looking out the window the next night, or vice versa, one of those two. But the symmetry there, top-notch stuff from a really gifted director.
I was really impressed with the direction on this, and I think Tobe Hooper gets a bad rap sometimes. The man was really skilled with what he did. I know it's easy to kind of write off, oh, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, it's just this blood fest, and it's really not.
I don't agree with that. I think, and look, I have to say that I'm more of a things that go bump in the night guy. I'm not
Same.
more, I'm not really a slasher guy, but Texas Chainsaw Massacre does what it's supposed to do. It's
Mhm.
supposed to horrify you and scare the bejesus out of you, and that's what it does. And there's some really terrific direction in that picture that's incredibly impressive. And if one, speaking to the audience, if you can put aside the preconceived notion of the slasherism, anti-slasherism syndrome, perhaps, and just look at it as a piece of film, that guy knew what he was doing. Like the coverage inside the van as they're getting close to the farm, if you will. And it's the same thing in Salem's Lot. Inside the Marston house, okay, well, we might be jumping around a little bit here, but the art direction inside the Marston house, where everything is like covered with feathered down, and there's all these impaled animal heads on the walls, and they're lit by these greens and oranges. That whole scene, anytime you're in that set, it's like really, really terrifying. And the guy knew how to push your buttons.
Mm-hmm.
Good director, really good director.
Very good director, and like I said, I don't think he gets the credit that he deserves for what he did. And
Poltergeist.
Yeah,
Come on.
Poltergeist. He did Life Force, which has got some cool stuff in it.
I agree.
He did quite a bit. That he's not just the maniac with the chainsaw guy.
No, he's not. And I think that this miniseries is proof of that.
Yeah.
There are just a lot of terrific shots throughout the film, and he takes that Americana stuff just as seriously as he does the horror stuff, and that's why that story works so well.
Yeah. Now, I had read that Romero was at one point attached to this or was approached to direct.
Okay.
Have you heard any of that?
No, but you got me excited by saying that.
That would have been a totally different movie.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, look, Romero, come on. I mean, seminal, right? Like, well, my hat's off. Hall of Fame, right?
Yeah.
No question. And yet, I think Tobe Hooper did a magnificent job.
The right guy directed it. The right guy.
Yeah. Look, George Romero version, maybe a few more simoleons in the effects budget, perhaps.
True.
But definitely that would have been interesting. A John Carpenter version, perhaps.
Ooh, yeah, that would have been different too.
Right.
Different too.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's telling that we just mentioned two other directors who did direct Stephen King stuff. So
that's right.
Yeah.
Right. And so I have to say that as we sort of move through this conversation, we have to arrive at the most terrifying vampire I've ever seen in my life.
Okay.
That vampire, I was not ready for that thing. And I had, look, like I mentioned before, I had bought all the Scholastic Monsters of the Movies books. I knew all about Nosferatu. I had not seen it yet either. That scene in the jail cell where the guy that beat up Ned Tibbetts had beat up Ben Mears is just waking up, and he looks over, and then some hand opens the jail cell.
Oh yeah.
And then this fiend from hell comes out, and that is like, look, like you could see like the makeup lines, but when you're a little kid, they were like wrinkles from Pandemonium, right? They're just like, oh my God, and the teeth and the eyes, and just like, and he's wearing some kind of Sith Lord outfit as well too, right? Like, oh my God, what is this thing? And if I was holding a cereal bowl while eating it, I might have tossed the Frosted Flakes at that point, but it was just horrifying. I'd never seen anything like it. If I've spoiled it for you, dear audience, listener, then I'm sorry. You had your shot. You've had, I would say, almost half a century to watch this puppy. And I apologize for spoiling it, but my goodness, that's the scariest vampire
He looks great. Oh, he's so good.
And look, one could make the argument, yes, you can say everything from a direct ripoff to heavily influenced to homage. It really doesn't matter because that guy is so scary that it does what it's supposed. It's like a sledgehammer at that point of the story. You're like, boom, this is where we're going next. And yet I'll say that in the novel, Barlow speaks. He looks like a regular dude. His hair is like black and combed back. He has many lines in the story. After he has vampirized the Bonnie Bedelia, he's vampirized her. They actually have a conversation with Ben out in a field somewhere.
Wow.
So and she basically say, "Hey Ben, come on down. The water's fine. Come on over. It'll all be great. Here's a AAA card. You can join for free." And and yet this also works really well. And because I saw it as a TV show first, it just impressed itself upon me. And so when I read it now, I kind of have to sort of think about the Nosferatu version of Barlow speaking those lines. Maybe he's in shadow somewhere with raking light and you can't see him fumbling through his teeth or whatever. But that was no BS. That was the real deal back then.
Reggie Nalder, the actor, already had a distinct look to begin with. And then the makeup they put on top of it.
Oh my God.
So good.
I think it's also he's wearing some kind of contact lenses.
Yeah, the eyes.
It's giving him some kind of feral lion-like look that is just completely unholy. You're just like, oh my gosh, I can't deal with that. And that leads us to that scene in the kitchen. That scene in the kitchen with Lance Kerwin, his parents, and the priest, and then the window breaks, this black cloth of a blob kind of lands on the floor. It starts to sort of rise. It looks like it's baking an evil cake or something like that.
Yeah.
And then suddenly he turns around and you just go, yep, this isn't going to go very well. And it's an amazing makeup. It really is an amazing makeup. Yeah.
Well, even the character's presence, even before we get a full-on reveal, like when we see Fred Willard's character, Larry, getting caught sleeping with another man's wife and running out, and then he like looks back at the house and then turns and then freezes as a hand comes up in front of him.
Right.
That's just, I can imagine watching that on television and, like you said, bowl of cereal, a bucket of popcorn, whatever I'm eating, whatever, just flying. She's like,
oh my God. Yeah, I got to put on spare pajamas because this is not. Yeah, no, all that stuff is just like so effective and so bold for back then. If you think about it, there was really nothing like that on TV. It was taken very seriously. I don't know what the heck I was doing up 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, during my junior high years, but there I was glued to the TV. I do think there was the whole like Kolchak the Night Stalker thing going on. Like I missed the first time that Kolchak the Night Stalker was on. I missed it. My parents were like, "No, you can't watch that."
no.
Well, I was 8. Like, well, you're not ready for that. So I think I saw they replayed it. I think either the next year or sometime after that, and that like really really impressed me. And so then this thing came on. Like we're not doing the Kolchak thing again, man. I'm watching this thing, and so then I remain impressed by the violence and the total sense of horror that a network television show was presenting to the world. Yeah.
It is pretty intense. It is pretty violent, but it's still, because it's network television, it has to be a little restrained. Right. And again, I go back to the direction. He didn't let that stop him.
He didn't. No, absolutely.
It's just so good. And I know we don't see the vampire on screen very much. We see him very little, in fact. But when we do see him, it is done so well and it's so effective that we got what we needed.
We got what we needed, and then you start seeing some of the other ramifications of other people infected. And there's the guy in the teacher's house on the second floor, and he's got to go up there. I forget the teacher's name, but you see the guy sitting in the rocking chair, and he looks up and his eyes are glowing. Again, that stuff was way ahead of its time, man, in terms of glowing eyes on camera, on film, looking without an optical effect. That was like really impressive. And again, he's all purpley and whatnot. It's just very corpse-like, very corpse-like.
I also really like the constable running out of town, leaving town.
I agree. No,
he's this guy when the movie starts or when the show starts, he's kind of a little suspicious of Ben Mears and sniffing around a little bit because he's concerned about his town. It's clear that he cares about what's going on in Salem's Lot. But once we get to the end, he's not only fleeing town, he's leaving his weapon behind. He's done. He's like,
yeah, he's like, here you go. I'll see you later.
Yeah, you take this, use this. I'm going to South Carolina.
Yeah, I'm going to South Carolina. I guess the writer can be sheriff now.
Yeah.
There you go. But there's a scene that he has with Straker where they're looking for the kid. And so Straker brings in his suits because David Soul finds a patch of black cloth, right, as they're searching for the boy. And so that leads, and he says to Constable, hey, this is what that Straker guy wears. And so he calls him in. And they have a really interesting conversation. The Straker's like, so you're suspecting me because I'm the new guy in town? And he's like, yeah. Yeah. We don't know who you are, and there's a kid that's missing, and so I'm going to send these to FBI, and the FBI to have them checked. James Mason's so cool. He's like, I'd like them clean, please.
Yeah.
I like them clean and pressed and returned. And he's like, okay. But there is that sort of, they have their repartee. They have the repartee in the antiques place as well, right? So the antiques place is really cool because you see some taxidermy there as well, and then they pay it off at the end in the horror that is the inside of the Marston house. And on the whole film sort of production thing as well, I don't think that the interior of the Marston house matches the exterior of the Marston house, but who cares? Who cares? That thing is just a pit from hell, and it's just really, really terrifying. And I do love the Marston house on the hill. It's really cool.
It looks great. And they built that facade. They spent some real money to make that look the way it does.
That's right. I'll send this to you, but there is a YouTube video of the Salem's Lot locations then and now.
Oh yeah?
So yes, no, my nerdiness knows no bounds. Like here's I think I shared this on Facebook just before. This is my cover to the OG version. Like I love this thing. It's terrific. I just put this on Facebook that there's an original cover that sold like 30,000 copies, and then they put this sucker out and it sold millions. Times the cover it does what it's supposed to do.
And I saw you post that on Facebook, and I was like, okay, yeah, he's ready. He's ready for this guy.
Here we go. I'm ready to roll. Listen, no, here we go. So have you seen any of the other versions as well? Or
I vaguely remember watching some of it was Rob Lowe, right?
It is Rob Lowe, and it's a little oversaturated in color. And I think that Father Callahan kind of comes back into the story after he's vampirized. The story is a little bit I will say it's longer, and you get into some of the other storylines that are in the novel, but it just and Rutger Hauer plays a pretty good interpretation of the novel version of Barlow.
I forgot that he was Barlow.
Yeah, like there's like the grumpy bus driver that doesn't like the kids.
Yeah,
in the novel. Okay, and then they kind of come for him. That kind of stuff. That's kind of fun, but it just never rises to the horror that this thing does and the novel does. And then there's also the 2024 version that I just last year. I was really excited for this thing. Yeah, because I like the Conjuring universe, and some of the movies are better than others, but they're a lot of fun for me. One of the writers, this guy named Gary Dauberman, had written a few of those films, and so I was genuinely excited when he got the chance to direct this, and I saw it last year, and I didn't like it. I was really kind of upset at the treatment, and I saw it recently in preparation for this thing, and I like it more. It still doesn't hold a candle to the book or the miniseries, but there's some cool stuff there. I would say that if you can watch it with an open mind, the vampire stuff is cool. Like I will say it's an exercise in timing. They only have 2 hours, right, as opposed to 3 hours that the 79 version has. And there's a really cool scene where the protagonists pull up in the house. They're like, okay, let's go, get out of the car. And one was like, don't get out, don't look. If you look, don't look, but there's some vampires on the roof of this house that we're going into, and you cut and you see a bunch of vampires up there. There's some cool stuff there. There is some cool stuff, but it's just not it's not Tobe Hooper, and Tobe Hooper was the man. He already established his reputation. He knew what he was doing, and he just, scared us like crazy.
Um, what about Return to Salem's Lot?
Yeah. Well,
is that all I need to say?
no, there, to be fair, I'm not being fair to this film because the first vampire that's on there is like really sort of rubbery and, takes you out of the context of what I consider to be the quote unquote reality
Okay.
that was explained in the first, in the first story. I think that, I didn't see the rest of it, so I'm being completely unfair and judging something that I haven't seen. But I just
man.
felt, no, that's something like that should be, not in this film, and yeah, I will say that the excuse me, the Chapelwaite series, if you haven't seen that is really cool.
Now that's based on the Jerusalem's Lot short story, which is kind of like all precursor to everything, right?
Correct. Okay, so there's two short stories there's two Salem's Lot short stories. Okay, one of them is that story. Okay, and there's another one called One for the Road, and it's basically this bar near Salem's Lot. These two guys are just sitting out the night, ready to close. This guy comes in. He's an out of towner. And he says, "Hey, look, you guys got to help me. My car broke down about a mile away. It's in the snow, and my wife and kid are in there. You got to help me." And they just look at each other. They say, "Mister, nobody goes into Salem's Lot since there was a fire there a couple of years ago." They don't want to say the word vampire yet, but of course they end up going over there, and some funky stuff happens, and that's a good story. But Jerusalem's Lot is look. Pilgrims and vampires, man. Pilgrims, Lovecraft, and vampires. That's the unholy trifecta there. And I totally recommend both Jerusalem's Lot, and I do recommend Chapelwaite. Chapelwaite I will say it's remarkably similar to Salem's Lot in the sense that the first couple of episodes, there's not a lot of vampire stuff in there, but when it starts coming, it's really cool. I would probably recommend that over any other of the remakes or other versions of Salem's Lot. It's really cool. I like it. It's a good story.
Okay.
Yeah. No. And there's some genuinely fun vampire stuff in there. Again, early colonial America, vampires, Lovecraftian worship going on. That's more in the short story, not in Chapelwaite. But I do recommend both of those as well.
All right. Yeah. So Chapelwaite I missed, but I knew about its kind of sort of connection to everything.
Yeah. No, if you go on eBay and type in a certain combination of words and put DVD at the end of it, some magical stuff might nothing up in there. So
magical stuff. Okay,
that's right. But I like it. I kind of, perhaps as I get older, I get kind of hard to please. I mean, I'm in a different phase of my career now. I teach, and my publishing stuff kind of keeps me going. But I do take the stuff probably as more seriously than I should. When I was a little kid, this stuff meant a lot to me, man. I'm like, hey, Lon Chaney Jr. does not sound like a European count. What's going on there? But it's only because I loved it so much, and it meant so much to me. And we talked before about how much I love Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman. That's
right. Well, and that love is felt in, at least in the 79 version. Right. And I'm sure it's in the other ones too. But I mean, one of our main characters, one of our kids, one of our saviors is a monster kid. So you've got him, you got that connection there too, which I love.
I love all the Aurora kits that they have.
Right.
A Wolfman bust that he has in there. That's really cool. And then he has a Wolfman poster next to the window where his brother is going to come in. And I'm like, oh, I remember that poster. It was in Famous Monsters of Filmland. It was.
Yep.
So he is so yes. A monster kid saves Salem's Lot. Well, I mean, we have to save it. They set it.
It kind of helps. Yeah.
Yeah. No, they have to beat it after that. But he's not afraid. I will say that. It's really cool how he's like, hey, Barlow, you killed my mom and dad. I'm going to get you. He's like fearless. And He ends up doing Bonnie Bedelia in the process, but he's all about being Blade. It was awesome. You know, he said, "I'm going to be Blade today. I'm going to just run in there." And then, okay, so he loves magic, and he has kind of this uneasy relationship with his dad, and his dad's basically like, "Look, are you going to grow up and work at an 1980s makeup effects creature house?" And he's like, "Yeah, that's exactly what I'm going to do, Dad. Leave me alone." And I love that about him. And so he's like, and again, Tobe Hooper, man, explaining stuff. He's like, "I can get out of these cuffs." And the dad's like, "No, I'm sure you could." Right. So dad kind of misses the chance to hang with his son a little bit. But it pays off at the end of the story.
It really does.
Really cool.
There's another performer in this movie I just want to comment on, because every time I see him in anything, and it doesn't matter what it is, I love him. And it's Jeffrey Lewis. I love Jeffrey Lewis in this, and his descent into vampirism is just fantastic. And normally he's got kind of like a friendly face, but when he goes full vampire, he's terrifying.
He's terrifying, but again, like this is some great casting from the director, and like Elisha Cook as well. Elisha Cook, like that guy was in the Maltese Falcon, man. Come on, and you have Jeffrey Lewis here. He just kind of feels like a regular village guy, a regular Salem's Lot denizen, and he's like, "Hey, I work at the cemetery," and I think he tells a couple of the guys in the story, "It's kind of quiet out here. I like it. Everybody leaves me alone. It's pretty cool." And then the scene where he basically hops back into the ground and opens the coffin. It's the way that the mood, the lighting, the wind, the leaves. It's so well done. In the novel, the doctor and Ben Mears think that Jeffrey Lewis's character is on something. He's like, "Are you on something?" So that's why he takes him home. And that whole scene where Ben Mears and the teacher actually say, "Hey, we found this dead guy. What are we going to do?" Then the bite marks are gone. It's all really, really well told visually, and he's terrific as well. Yeah.
Oh, he's fantastic. I've always liked him in everything that I've ever seen him in.
Right.
And just for him to turn up in this the way that he did is just horrifying. And I mean, you just subverted this beloved character actor and turned him into this horrible thing. It's great.
There's this terrific shot where he actually backs out of the window and he falls toward camera.
Yeah.
Like he breaks through the window and he falls out. And then the teacher kind of runs over and looks down and he's gone. I mean, it's like classic storytelling, works really, really well. And you see him at the end. You see Jeffrey Lewis at the end.
Oh, when he's crawling through that little cellar or whatever. Yeah.
Yes. And they're just kind of all waking up and they're just slowly moving toward Lance Kerwin's character in the background. And it's just that whole end scene is magnificent, in my opinion. It's like you can't top that. What's really sad is that the 2024 version kind of just said, we have to do something a little bigger. And I think that that's to the detriment of the story, because that scene is so intense, and it's really intense in the book as well. Yeah, that there's just a claustrophobia. Like they have to go into the cellar. Then there's like this root cellar that they have to go into. They got to break the lock. There's all these corpses sort of just laying there asleep, and the sun's going down. It's amazing. It's amazing.
That's awesome.
Yes. And and then the coffin that Barlow has, you're like, yep, that's that thing looks like it's 500 years old. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. It's really cool. I don't know if you pay attention. There's when the constable reads from I think it's the deputy that reads to Parkins, like, yeah, Kurt Barlow with a K. So there's like a little backstory there on Barlow and where he's from that it gets expanded upon a little bit more in the book as well. But it's a lot of fun in terms of, again, King is really cool at stitching together chapter to chapter tidbits that add up throughout the story as you go.
Right. And you get that in this for sure.
Absolutely.
Everything just kind of adds up to this incredible piece of 1970s TV horror. We don't really see that much anymore on network television. I mean, you got all these streaming channels doing their own thing now, but man, I'm just trying. I didn't see this as a kid growing up. I was a little too young. So I came to it when I rented it on VHS from the video store.
Okay.
Years ago. That's the first time I watched it.
Look, the cover is just enough to get you.
Yeah, the cover's fantastic.
I mean, the cover is kind of a spoiler, but that's still not the object is to sell, right? And it's still a really classic poster, in my opinion. I love it. So
it's really, really good. Everything about this is phenomenal, top-notch stuff.
So there's the end, the staking of Barlow at the end, which is like really just terrific, and again, how they got away with that for network TV in 1979 is astonishing. And then there's the coda in Guatemala, where Bonnie Bedelia's vampiric character has pursued them into the town they're living in. The reveal of her eyes, just like Jeffrey Lewis's eyes, is amazing. It's a terrific way to end the story. And it's a magnificent piece of mood as well. The lighting there kind of feels a little supernatural as well.
And you don't know if he's going to succumb to her or not.
Right.
Yeah. She's like, I love you. And he's like, yes. Yeah. Yes, leaning forward, closer, closer, closer. She's going for the neck. We get the reverse shot on him, and just outside, just kind of barely out of focus,
just kind of
see the stake kind of come up. It's like, so good.
It's so cool, and it hurts him so deeply to do it, and it's a good. I firmly believe that good horror stories, they have one final horror, and that is the final horror in that story, and it pays off.
It really does.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's great.
Yeah.
So how has this affected you in terms of like the vampire and output that you've had lately? Because you've been on a tear with some of this vampire stuff, man.
Oh, that's nice of you to say. Very much so. This really influenced me in terms of my recent publishing stuff. And as I was referencing before, my journey to Costa Rica as a little kid, as a kid who loved everything about being in America and my school and my life here, and then going to Costa Rica, and everything feels so different. I sort of really discovered vampirism down in Costa Rica. And so my new novel, my illustrated novel is called Vampire, a horror folktale. And it's based on a story that I came up with that involves the hometown that my family's from. In talking to my parents, I realized that there was what I call a really cool story intersection. And when my parents were 8 years old, there was a civil war in Costa Rica in 1948, and it happened during Easter week. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, that's like a story intersection that's waiting to happen. And I just inserted a vampire into that. And what would this small town do if there was this fiendish, shape-shifting thing of the night killing someone every night? And it is based on seeing Brides of Dracula and horror of Dracula and Dark Shadows in Spanish as a little kid and back then, and how much all that really influenced me. I kind of really never went away from that. I think life is really circular in that sense. If you start thinking about the Joseph Campbells and the George Lucases of the world and how much they take that stuff so seriously. And so now here I am telling stories about the stuff that meant so much to me like 55 years ago. And being a little kid in those theaters, there's this really, of course, the great gag at the end of Brides of Dracula with the windmill.
Oh, my favorite.
Like, oh my God, that's a cool, right? Like, oh my God, right? You can't, like, that might be one of the great vampire gags of all time.
I love it.
Right? And so I loved all that stuff. I remember watching El Santo contra las Mujeres Vampiros and thinking, those henchmen, do they need Dracula capes and wrestling stuff? Like, it meant so much to me. Derek, is like I had that rationalized everything. If El Santo's driving around in his coupe and he's on TV talking to headquarters, I'm like, where's the camera? Where is the camera? I'm like 9 years old trying to. Yeah, but it meant so much to me, and it still does. And I'm in a different, time and place now. Like I was saying, I was fortunate this year to become a member of the Motion Picture Academy, and so I'll be voting on my first Oscars coming up shortly. As a sign of synchronicity, here are Sinners and Frankenstein nominated for Best Picture, two just wonderful, wonderful films that I enjoyed very much last year. And sometimes everything just kind of lines up. But I will say that when I was at Art Center, as a student, a very poor student, I saw this book on the shelves, and it was called Cycle of the Werewolf, and it was written by Stephen King, and it was illustrated by Bernie Wrightson.
Yeah.
And it's a series of murders, but it takes place over a year, month to month. And so now my new book takes place over a week, daily, every night somebody gets killed. And so I had maybe $15 to my name. I had one of those Velcro 80s wallets, and I ripped it open. Do I have enough? And I was like, it's that and eat bologna sandwiches. And that's what I did. I ate bologna sandwiches for the week so I could buy Cycle of the Werewolf, so that all these years later, and I put that in the introduction to the book, that Cycle of the Werewolf, Stephen King, Bernie Wrightson, all those guys, man, they were my heroes. They still are, and I'm just kind of lucky to be here, and it all worked out for me, and I'm really grateful for that.
We're going to make sure there's a link in the show notes as of this recording, and when this goes out, there will be at least 2 days left for people to check out the Kickstarter for Ricardo Delgado's Vampire, a horror folk tale, vampire spelled with a Y. So if you're looking for it that way, but again, follow the link in the show notes to get there as well. It's already blown way past its initial goals. So
really excited. I'm glad that people are responding to it. We are recording on Super Bowl Sunday, Superb Owl Sunday, to quote What They Do in the Shadows. And like I said, I'm really grateful. This is for my parents, but it's also for my kids as well, because they grew up here in the States, and it's good for them to know a little bit more about the old country. I think that that's a healthy perspective for everyone, wherever they come from, to sort of have that sort of information and understanding. If anything, it's almost like a reliquary for my parents' memories of being in Costa Rica as little kids. And now my kids and anybody else that comes after can read about what it was like to be around back then. So, and of course, there's a vampire in there, so you can't beat that with a stick, as they say, right?
If nothing else, come for the vampire.
That's right. If nothing else, come for the vampire. And lastly, because I'm a concept designer in town, there's a bunch of wonderful, I like them, concepts that I did for each of the shape-shifting versions of the vampire. They're
nice.
And I'm really proud of them. And it's based on the process that you go through of creating different iterations of the creatures and showing them to the producers and directors. And I'm really excited about it. And it's a very personal project, and very proud of it. And I hope everybody enjoys it.
That's awesome. Is it too soon to ask what's coming up next for you? Got anything else?
No, it's not. If you go to my Instagram page, my next thing is a science fiction spy thing called Warhead. It's already done. It'll be published by Clover sometime later this year. I'm really excited about it. I was a little kid, and there's a lot of stuff that I loved in the 70s. I loved vampires. I adored Planet of the Apes. Loved Planet of the Apes. But I loved those Bond movies from the 1960s. I thought they were really cool. Okay, and so this is basically an alien version of a spy story that maybe Ian Fleming would have dashed off back in the day, and it's full of wonderful concept design. The tentative cover is pinned to my Instagram page and to my Facebook page, so check those out. That'll be later this year. Working on the next thing as well, but definitely Warhead it's my big move into science fiction storytelling. I'm really proud of it. It's something that I'm in the position now where I can tell my own stories, and my publishing does well enough to be able to allow me to do that. I love teaching, and so the studio stuff comes here and there. It's less so these days. It's kind of a really tough time in the business, I must say. I'm a member of 2 unions, 2 guilds, and the Animation Guild and the Art Directors Guild, and 70% of the unions are not working these days. The AI stuff is just astonishingly taking over. Evolution is merciless, and it's undefeated, as they say. So But I'm lucky to be doing what I'm doing. Always eternally grateful that people like looking at my silly stuff, and most certainly I'm grateful for you to having me on. Thank you.
I appreciate it, man. I can't wait to see what what Warhead's going to look like. I do follow you on Instagram, but I'll make sure there's a link in the show notes to that as well.
Okay,
and
thanks.
for the book and anything else you've got coming up. And you've been on the show before, but it's been forever.
No,
So
we got to do this more often. I know.
yeah,
we
let's
talked
not
about-
wait nearly as long.
No, we gotta figure that out. I will say that one of the goodies for my novel is that Clover is reprinting the tarot card set that got sold out the first time.
Okay.
So I'm really excited about that. There's all kinds of goodies in there. I mean, I hate to put my selling hat on, but that is actually I could take it off for that because those tarot cards are really cool. I'm very proud of those, and not bad for a kid, who spilled the cereal, in the living room watching Salem's Lot back in the late 1970s, back in the day. Although I did love gargoyles as well. That really scared me as well.
There you go.
But that, as they say, is another story. So.
Huge thanks to Ricardo for being part of the show this week, man. I appreciate him so much. And he's just a busy guy working on so many different things, including drumming up support for Ricardo Delgado's Vampire, a horror folk tale. I mentioned it briefly when I was chatting with him. It's up on Kickstarter right now and only has a couple of days left. I'll make sure there is a link in the show notes for y'all to click on and check out and throw some support his way, because Monster Kids, man, we look out for each other, we help each other up, we prop each other up, and we support each other with awesome Monster Kid content like this. I've seen some of Ricardo's other books. I've got them. They're awesome. And I cannot wait to check this out. It's a fully illustrated novel. It looks super cool, man. Seriously. You're going to be kicking yourself if you don't pick this up. So check that out. You can find that over at monsterkidradio.net, where you're going to find links to everything else Ricardo's got going on. He mentions an Instagram and things like that. We'll make sure there are links to that as well as what Mark's up to, and just basically everything you heard about in this episode. You're going to find links in the show notes over at monsterkidradio.net, including our contact information. monsterkidradio@gmail.com is the email address. Our voicemail line is 360-524-2484. You're going to find links to all of our social media over there. You're going to find links to our Patreon, which I mentioned because this is the only place where we actually mention what's coming up on the next episode of the podcast. So make sure you follow us over on Patreon, even as a free member. You're going to get access to that information when I post the show notes later this week. Which means I basically need to figure out what we're going to be talking about next week on the show. I've got a day or two to figure that out. Anyway, make sure you check out monsterkidradio.net. Now, Brian, the guy that wrote the email at the top of the show, he reached out to me saying there was some difficulty that he was having using the Amazon affiliate link. I'm going to look into that and make sure it still works. But if you are shopping on Amazon, please use the Amazon affiliate link. You can't miss it. It says Monster Kid Radio. It's got the Amazon A. It's got a Frankenstein monster. Every time you use that link, you're helping us out by just, skimming a little bit off the top of what would normally go to Jeff Bezos and company. It helps us out here on the podcast quite a bit. You're also going to find a link to Death Designs, where we have all of our Hawaiian-style shirts, our woman's design, the monster poster lobby card collage thing. There's a woman's Hawaiian shirt there now, as well as a dress. So you can find a link to that over there. And, oh darn, I haven't raised the prices back up to the normal $40 yet, which means you can still get one for $30 if you head over there now before I get the prices back up to where they were before we dropped them for the holidays. So go check that out as well. Now, last week, I talked a little bit about getting the Cyber Street team going. We're calling it the Bride's Inner Sanctum. That's right, the Inner Sanctum here at Bride of Monster Kid Radio. If you want to join the Cyber Street team, Beth and I are kind of working out the structure and what you get for participating in the Inner Sanctum. And what kind of things are we looking at? Well, nothing too hard, really. Just promoting the show wherever you happen to be online. If you post on Facebook, well, just share the post. If you're on X or Blue Sky, we'll just retweet or repost or whatever about the episode that we just put out. We're just looking to help spread the word and get more eyes on the product, so to speak. You know, we don't do a lot over at the Classic Horror Film Board. It's just one thing that I've never worked into my regular social media routine. I need to, but if you're active on the Classic Horror Film Board, they're taking nominations for the Rondo Hatton Classic Horror Awards right now. Get in on that and talk us up. Talk about what we're doing here on the podcast. It would really help us out. One thing that I think we're going to end up doing is that if you do so much as part of the Inner Sanctum, you're going to get some merch. Not quite sure what that merch is going to be yet. Stay tuned for how you can earn merch as being part of the Bride's Inner Sanctum, coming soon here on the podcast. Bride of Monster Kid Radio is a Team Death production. All original content of Bride of Monster Kid Radio is licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives 4.0 Unported license. You can learn more about Team Death, our other projects like Death Designs, Mail Order Zombie, the Team Death YouTube channel, and more at www.teamdeath.com. Remember, death is spelled D-E-T-H. All previous episodes of this podcast, as well as the original Monster Kid Radio podcast, are available at www.monsterkidradio.net. Please rate and review Bride of Monster Kid Radio wherever you download your favorite podcasts. Transylvania Dreamin' is copyright 2025, Jay Poison and the Bat People. You can find it on their album, Transylvania Dreamin', which you can find over at Bandcamp at jpoisonandthebatpeople.bandcamp.com, or just follow the link in the show notes and check out their link tree and everything else they've got going on all over the internet. Just make sure you let them know that you heard about them here on Bride of Monster Kid Radio. My name's Derek M. Cook. I'll talk to everybody next time. Ciao.